Addiction is ultimately a spiritual problem and demands a spiritual solution. Carl Jung. Have you ever asked yourself, what am I really craving? Not the substance, not the behavior, but the soul underneath. Have you found yourself in cycles you can't explain again and again, reaching for relief, but only finding emptiness? You tell yourself to stop. You promise you will, but something deeper takes the reins. Why? What is it that takes over when you no longer feel in control? Before we go further, I invite you to pause and comment below. What is the addiction you or someone you love has struggled with? Because in naming it, you are not confessing weakness. You are breaking the silence that keeps the shadow in power. Let us begin, not with blame, but with curiosity. Addiction is not simply a disease. It is not merely chemical. It is not just willpower gone awry. It is, at its core, a cry from the soul, a distorted search for wholeness, a hunger for the sacred that has been misdirected toward the temporary. I have said it before, the person who drinks excessively is looking for God, however unconsciously. And this does not apply to alcohol alone. It applies to every form of compulsive behavior, substance abuse, pornography, gambling, food, shopping, social media, even relationships. Addiction is not about the object. It is about the emptiness. The emptiness is not your fault. It was carved into you by abandonment, by trauma, by rejection, by the 1,000 small wounds that made you believe you were not enough, that you had to earn love, that you were only safe when you were in control, that your pain must be hidden, your grief swallowed. And so you created a mask, the persona, the one who performs, the one who pleases, the one who appears strong, competent, in control. But beneath that mask lives the shadow, the rejected self, the one you banished, the one you feared, the one who carries the pain you couldn't bear to feel. And the shadow does not disappear. It waits. It grows stronger in the dark. Addiction is what happens when the shadow becomes unbearable. It is the soul's last attempt to numb the unbearable pain of disconnection, not just from others, but from yourself, from your true, unfiltered, unapproved, unpolished self. So when someone says, "Why don't they just stop?" they misunderstand the depth of the wound, the substance, the screen, the cycle. They are not the problem. They are the solution. The soul's desperate solution to a problem that has not been named exile from the inner world. What I have seen in those suffering from addiction is not weakness. It is sensitivity, depth, a profound capacity to feel, a capacity that, in a cruel world, became too much to bear. And so, rather than feel, you fled into escape, into relief, into anything that made the pain go away, even for a moment. But the pain always returned, because the soul will not be silenced. It will not settle for substitutes. It will cry out until it is heard. This is the spiritual root of addiction. And so, the solution must be spiritual too. Not religious in the dogmatic sense, but spiritual, as in reconnecting to your own wholeness, as in facing what you could not face before, as in reclaiming the parts of you that were cast away. But how? We begin with the shadow. You must come to see that the part of you addicted is not your enemy. It is a part of you that is trying to survive. It is a messenger, a protector, a wounded child doing the only thing it knows how to do to feel safe. If you meet this part with shame, you only drive it deeper into hiding. And in hiding, it becomes more dangerous, more compulsive, more chaotic. You must meet it with compassion. You must say, I see you. I know you are hurting, and I will not abandon you anymore. This is not a one-time act. It is a daily choice. Because the path out of addiction is not linear. It is a spiral. You will revisit the same patterns again and again, not because you are failing, but because healing happens in layers. Each time you fall, you are given the chance to fall with more awareness. Each relapse is not a verdict. It is an invitation to look deeper. What are you avoiding? What pain are you trying not to feel? What part of you have you judged unworthy of love? These are not questions of diagnosis. They are questions of meaning. And meaning is what transforms suffering. The addict does not need more rules. They need more understanding, more integration, more contact with the self beneath the mask. In Jungian psychology, we call this process individuation. It is the journey of becoming whole, of facing both your light and your darkness, of reclaiming the parts of yourself you've abandoned in order to survive. And this journey, while painful, is the only one that leads to freedom. You cannot heal addiction by removing the substance alone. You must replace it with connection, with truth, with inner congruence. Because the hunger will not stop until it is fed with what it truly needs: meaning, love, belonging not from the world, but from within. This is the paradox. The more you suppress your shadow, the stronger your addiction becomes. But when you integrate your shadow, when you allow it to be seen, to speak, to be held, you remove its power to control you. You begin to choose. And choice, my friend, is the birthplace of freedom. But let me be clear, this is not easy. It means sitting with discomfort. It means feeling what you've avoided for years: grief, anger, emptiness, longing. It means grieving the illusion that addiction kept alive, the illusion that relief could be found outside of yourself. And it means surrender, not to the addiction, but to the truth. The truth that you are not broken. The truth that your addiction is not a flaw, but a signal. The truth that healing is not about perfection. It is about honesty. You will not be healed by pretending. You will be healed by revealing. And that begins with telling the truth to yourself: I am in pain. I have tried to numb it, and I am ready to listen. The shadow behind addiction is not evil. It is unloved. And when love enters the shadow, something miraculous happens. Integration? You begin to see that your pain is not who you are, that your compulsion is not your identity, that your past does not define your future. You begin to access a new kind of power, not control, but presence. And in presence, you no longer need to escape, because you are finally home, in your body, in your truth, in your soul. This is what I meant when I said addiction requires a spiritual solution. Not because it is mystical, but because it is human. The spirit is the deepest part of our humanity, and to heal the spirit is to remember what it means to be whole. You may wonder, if the shadow is the source of so much suffering, why not simply eliminate it? But you see, the shadow is not meant to be erased. It is meant to be integrated. Within it lies not only the pain, but also the power you have disowned: your creativity, your passion, your authenticity, your fire. The The part of you that learned to survive through addiction is the same part that holds the key to your transformation. Addiction is a mask worn by the soul when it feels unseen. Beneath it lies a yearning for intimacy, not with others first, but with the self. And that self is not simply a higher idea of who you ought to be. It is who you truly are, in your wholeness, with both your wounds and your wisdom. But make no mistake, the path to this self is through fire. You cannot avoid the descent. You cannot bypass the grief. You must face the chaos you once numbed. That means entering the very emotions you once fled from. That means staying present with your inner child when they cry out for something to fill the void. And the void is real. Addiction, in many cases, arises from the absence of presence. A childhood devoid of emotional attunement. A life where no one mirrored your worth, your feelings, your essence. So you learned to disappear from yourself, to abandon your needs, to silence your voice. And what was left in that silence became the hunger gnawing, endless, aching. No drug, no behavior, no person can permanently satisfy that hunger, because it is not for something outside. It is for reunion inside. What the addict seeks is not escape, it is embodiment. And embodiment begins with feeling the shame, the despair, the rage, the fear, not indulging them, not being consumed by them, but allowing them to move through, to be acknowledged, to be honored. Only through this feeling can the wound become visible, and only through visibility can healing begin. So ask yourself, not what am I addicted to, but what is my addiction trying to protect me from? What unbearable truth did I learn to cover with pleasure, with distraction, with urgency? What part of me never learned to feel safe in stillness? These are the questions that open the door to real recovery, not just sobriety, but soul recovery, the remembering of the parts of you lost in trauma, in fear, in the demands of being someone you are not. This path is not solitary. Yes, the work is inner, but healing happens in relationship, not codependence, not saviorhood, but conscious witnessing. You must find spaces safe, sacred spaces where your truth can be seen without judgment, where your shadow can speak without being shamed, where your pain is not pathologized, but understood. This is why I believed in the power of the therapeutic relationship not as a hierarchy, but as a mirror. Someone who sees past the mask. Someone who can hold space until you are strong enough to hold it for yourself. You will not be able to do this alone, because addiction is not just about substance. It is about separation. And the antidote to separation is connection. Connection to your emotions, connection to your body, connection to your inner truth. And yes, connection to something greater, something sacred. Call it God, Spirit, the divine, the higher self. Call it whatever resonates. What matters is that you recognize this. You were never meant to carry this alone. You were never meant to fill the void with temporary highs. You were meant to discover that within you lives a well that never runs dry, a source of peace, of love, of guidance. But that source is quiet, and addiction is loud. You must get still enough to hear it again. That may mean stepping away from noise, from the environments that trigger the cycle. That may mean setting boundaries, saying no. Letting go of people who only know how to relate to the version of you that stays asleep. It may mean reparenting yourself, giving yourself the attunement you never received, holding your own hand when no one else will, speaking to yourself as you would a wounded child, not with contempt, but with compassion, And from that place, you begin to choose differently. You begin to ask not, what will numb this feeling, but what does this feeling need? You begin to see the craving as a messenger, not a master. And with practice, with presence, with patience, you begin to reclaim your power. Not the power of force, but the power of clarity. The clarity that says, I am not my addiction. I am not my past. I am not my shame. I am the one who sees, the one who feels, the one who chooses. And choice, repeated with devotion, becomes freedom. But freedom is not a finish line. It is a daily practice, a daily remembering, a daily return to the self. And you will forget. That is part of it. You will fall into old patterns. That is not failure. That is the spiral. You are not back at the beginning. You are revisiting the same place with deeper awareness. Each time you return, you build strength. Each time you stay present, you heal the nervous system. You rewrite the story. You become less reactive, more rooted. This is what true recovery looks like. Not perfection, not the absence of pain, but the presence of self in the midst of it. And from this presence, something beautiful emerges. Gratitude, not for the addiction itself, but for what it revealed, for what it taught, for the way it cracked you open, for the way it forced you to face what you would have otherwise ignored. Your wound became your teacher, and as you integrate, you realize you are not just healing for yourself. You are becoming a light for others still lost in the dark. You begin to speak the truth others are afraid to say. You begin to love the parts of people they've been taught to hide. You begin to carry medicine not because you are perfect, but because you are real. And realness is rare. Your journey through addiction is not a detour. It is part of the path. It is the dark night that births the dawn. It is the descent that makes resurrection possible. So do not despise your past. Bless it, not because it was easy, but because it brought you here, to this moment, to this truth, to this self, the self that does not need to escape, the self that is enough, the self that is whole, the self that remembers I am not broken. I am becoming, and this becoming it is sacred. You do not have to prove your worth. You do not have to earn your healing. You only have to return again and again, with gentleness, with honesty, with the willingness to stay. Stay with the breath. Stay with the feeling. Stay with the self, because there is no shadow deeper than love. And love, true love, is what addiction was always searching for.